The city of Denver prepares for layoffs by making it easier to get rid of longtime employees.
I've given you my loyalty, my trust, my love, my blood, my sweat, and my tears, and this is how you reward me?
President Trump again says he wants to throw some American citizens out of this country, including people born here. There is a way the administration can strip naturalized citizens of their rights and deport them. We've learned about millions of dollars in taxpayer money that Governor Polis plans to spend on his pedestrian bridge legacy project. And a goose roundup in Denver. No, they're not killing them and feeding them to the homeless like they did a few years ago. Well, as far as we know. That's tonight on Next. Layoffs are coming for City of Denver employees as soon as 1 month from today. So pretty last minute for the city to be changing the rules on who gets fired first. Our Mark Salinger explains the new plan to prioritize performance and skills over years of service.
Insert the word "are" after the word skills, strike colon.
In a 4-hour meeting that would make most people's minds numb.
Put a comma after length of service, strike colon.
A quick vote at the end could change a lot of lives.
The motion passes with 4 in favor and 1 opposed. Any comments?
The jeers from the crowd of union members come as the Career Service Board approves a change to how the city of Denver determines who is laid off first. As the city faces a $250 million shortfall over the next 2 years, layoffs will now be determined based on performance, skills, ability, and length of service. Before, layoffs were only based on the time that someone had spent working for the city.
I'm a 51-year Teamster member.
Ronnie Houston is retired now and represents the Teamsters. He argues the changes will push out city employees who've been there the longest.
I don't want to be on some merit-based system. I've given you my loyalty, my trust, my love, my blood, my sweat, and my tears, and this is how you reward me?
The city hasn't said how many people will be laid off starting in August, but they argue the new rule will allow them to retain the best employees, regardless of how many people are fired. City council members don't see it that way.
I think everyone, rightly so, is very concerned about how this is rolling out.
11 of the 13 members of Denver City Council sent a letter yesterday to the Career Service Board, urging them not to pass the changes. The board passed them regardless.
I'm concerned about ageism claims. I'm concerned about retaliation complaints.
Now we know the rules, but we still don't know how many people will lose their jobs.
The mayor, they come and go. These workers, it's their career.
Some city council members are already growing concerned that we're now 1 month away from when the layoffs are expected to begin, and we still don't know how many people will lose their jobs or where the cuts will be made. No word from the mayor's office on when we might get that information. We do know that the job cuts will likely come through multiple rounds of layoffs, Kyle.
I think people get that cuts are going to need to be made with the budget situation. I think people understand that there's different ways to go about it. This very last minute of like changing the rules midstream and not knowing who's going to get whacked where, that's tough.
And there was the potential to even move it down a couple of weeks. They ended up voting on it today, but if we didn't get these changes, I mean, you're pushing the boundaries really far. They were already talking in the meeting today about training managers on how to do layoffs and how to decide which person will be laid off. Again, this could start 1 month from today.
All right. You're all over it. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Well, it's decision time for a freshman Republican congressman from Colorado. Because Jeff Hurd signed a letter saying that he could not support the deep Medicaid cuts in the Senate version of President Trump's budget bill. And the Senate narrowly passed that bill this morning. Now the House has to vote on it as is. The bill changed drastically hour by hour in the Senate as deals were cut to get individual Republicans on board. The current version that goes back to the House includes about $4.5 trillion in tax cuts, partially paid for by cuts to Medicaid and food assistance, and the rollback of clean energy tax breaks. Some controversial provisions were removed from the bill, including a proposal to sell off millions of acres in public land in western states. Jeff Hurd is the only Colorado Republican in Congress who's expressed any concern about the Medicaid cuts. His district in western and southern Colorado has the highest percentage of Medicaid recipients in the state. It's about 30% of the population. Republican Rep. Gabe Evans' district in Adams and Weld counties is a close second in terms of Medicaid recipients, but Evans is enthusiastically on board with those Medicaid cuts. So despite the mass sell-off of public lands being pulled out of the budget plan, there are local leaders in Colorado scrambling to protect those lands now that it's clear that it's a Republican priority these days. Commissioners in Eagle County are considering a mass rezoning to limit development. They're trying to stave off the event when federal lands are sold off to private owners. Eagle County commissioners say nearly 80% of the county is federal land. That's more than 1,300 square miles. County commissioners say most of that land would be difficult to develop anyway because it's already protected by restrictive zoning codes. But county leaders are still considering adding new protection by rezoning all federal land as backcountry. That is the county's most restrictive zoning code. It would limit home building or mining, drilling, logging.
This risk is not going away. And also to reiterate that the idea of selling public lands is not a bad idea per se. It is an idea that should go through the public process, particularly involving that public that is most directly impacted by the land that it's meant to be sold.
Commissioners are also worried about the management of those lands if they stay under federal control. County staff say federal layoffs have led to a 29% reduction in staff at the White River National Forest, which is down to just 43 permanent employees. President Trump is now calling for the deportation of U.S.-born American citizens, except that is not constitutional. Trump campaigned on deporting the worst of the worst violent criminals who did not have legal authorization to be in the U.S. His administration has now expanded those deportations to work site and neighborhood raids, grabbing immigrants who don't have a criminal record. And Trump is again saying that he wants to start removing some U.S. citizens from the country.
We also have a lot of bad people that have been here for a long time. They're not new to our country. They're old to our country. Many of them were born in our country. I think we ought to get them the hell out of here, too. You want to know the truth. So maybe that'll be the next job that we'll work on together.
Trump has openly mused about sending Americans convicted of crimes to foreign prisons. Legal experts say the U.S. government cannot revoke the citizenship of Americans born in this country. The U.S. government cannot expatriate or throw out of the country people who were born here unless that person relinquishes their citizenship by choice. There is a legal pathway being explored by the Trump administration to revoke U.S. citizenship from Americans who went through the naturalization process. A memo out this week outlines how the administration plans to denaturalize some citizens and remove them from the country. Our Angeline McCall explains.
Every day, residents turn into citizens, a process that takes years. Now the Trump administration wants to make its own process to revoke citizenship under certain circumstances.
This particular administration is using all of the weapons that it has at its power to skirt people out of the typical immigration system, which is famously backlogged.
Immigration attorney and CU Associate Dean Violeta Chapin describes a memo this week that proposes denaturalizing citizens for serious offenses like war crimes, but also for suspicion of lying on immigration forms or defrauding the government for things like benefits. The memo describes this denaturalization under civil law, meaning the government has a lower bar to prove and a defendant has no right to an attorney.
What we shouldn't tolerate is any presidential administration, regardless of political party, to be circumventing legitimate and important processes that allow people to say their part in a complete and transparent way.
Advocates say while the memo lays out certain crimes, the fear is that it would be used more broadly.
It seems ripe for abuse and setting up a situation where the government, the Trump administration, can target people that they deem as political rivals, right, who are naturalized citizens.
Raquel Lane Arellano works with the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition.
Seeing this administration carry out deportations, there's no guarantee that there will be genuine due process. This is one of the scariest things I've seen from this administration.
The fear that people will lose their citizenship after they've done things the so-called right way and were already granted citizenship.
People who are applying to be citizens, there is a robust background search that has gone into everyone. And the vast majority of people who are naturalizing are both eligible to naturalize and should be approved.
Denaturalization is not a new thing. It's been longstanding for decades at this point, but right now it is a criminal procedure where there's this really high bar to revoke someone's citizenship, and the defendant has a right to counsel as well right now. Kyle.
All right, this is, not unheard of in the past, but extremely rare. They'd go after people who, committed treason against the U.S. or people who obviously lied in order to sneak in as a U.S. citizen.
Right, we saw this several decades ago. We even saw former President Obama float this just about a decade ago. Now, when we talk about war crimes and extrajudicial killings and whatnot, yes, there's this other fear, though, right, where you have people who, let's say they didn't fill out a form correctly, or the government's claiming that they defrauded the government for, say, Medicaid or other benefits. Then it's like, how wide is this scope going to go?
Angeline McCall, thank you very much. School will soon be in session for gun owners in Colorado. New law requiring education before people can get a concealed carry permit. The governor's plan for a big pedestrian bridge has hit a snag at the state capitol as we learn more about the cost to taxpayers. And a catch and release day for geese in Denver. That's next. Several new state laws take effect today, including one requiring more training to get a concealed carry permit. First-time applicants will have to take an 8-hour training class, including a live fire exercise and written exam. To renew a permit, you'll have to prove your competency with a gun, like having a class certificate or military service. Also requires sheriffs to verify firearms instructors, to keep a list of them on their website. Another gun law passed late last year take effect today. That requires gun stores in Colorado to have a state-issued firearms dealer permit. The governor's proposed $29 million pedestrian bridge project planned for the front lawn of the state capitol did not go before a key Capitol committee as planned today. Discussion of that project is now being postponed until August. As we've learned, the Democratic Governor Jared Polis plans to use millions in taxpayer dollars to pay for it. The governor plans to tap into $8.5 million in general fund money that originally came from federal tax dollars during the pandemic. Those funds are under the governor's control, so he does not need the legislature's approval to spend that $8.5 million on the bridge. At last check, $1 million in private donations had also been secured, meaning that project still needs $19 million in additional funding. The governor's office has offered a shifting set of rationale on why the bridge is needed, that it's a public art project, that it will help pedestrian safety, that it's really about wheelchair accessibility. And lastly, they've said that it's a place for school kids to sit and eat their lunch when they visit the Capitol. Crispy, I don't know what you think about that. Kids need a place to sit and eat their lunch when they visit the Capitol.
You got to have a spot somewhere.
You got to have a spot. Why would you not spend $28.5 million on a bridge? It makes sense if you ask me.
100%. Only, by the way, Kyle, if we could maybe build a big bridge connecting the rest of the country from the airport right now, out at the airport right now, it's, as they say, a hot mess right now out at DIA. We got a storm that sat over the airport for the last basically 2 hours, producing nonstop 40, 50 mile an hour winds. So if you're trying to get in or out of Denver International Airport, it is, again, a hot mess with storms surrounding the airport, producing 40 to 50 mile an hour winds. Not exactly what you want to see if you're flying in or out of America's third busiest airport. Meantime, we're seeing those shower storms mainly north and east of Denver. We've got outflow boundaries that are colliding. That's forcing the air to rapidly rise. The result, we've had a ton of lightning north and east of the airport. We did have a brief vegetation fire just west of the airport that was put out about an hour ago, but still seeing some gusty winds out there. And for the most part, we're going to be done with those storms here across the I-25 corridor for the rest of the evening. Tomorrow, it stays dry. Then looking ahead over the next couple of days, we do have some showers and storms back in the picture for us on Thursday and perhaps for the 4th of July. However, Thursday, the best chance for a storm over the next few days, and just 1 or 2 storms for us on the 4th of July itself. And for this weekend, temperatures in the 90-degree realm, and we stay on the warm side into next week with only, again, isolated storms through the upcoming weekend.
We are out here gathering geese, Canada geese.
Geese have been splattering their mess all over Denver's parks, so some unlucky city employees got dispatched to round them up. You ever try to catch a goose? Me neither. Hey, a reminder, you can catch Next streaming each weeknight, 6 p.m. on 9 News Plus, and we are a podcast wherever you find those. People walking around Sloan's Lake in Denver this morning saw geese get abducted. like grabbed and stuffed into little goose jails. Canada geese have been overwhelming Denver's parks for decades, and this morning's roundup, unlike ones years ago, will not end up with geese getting chopped into chili and served to the homeless.
When folks live amongst the variety of types of urban wildlife in our parks, and we're also not only competing with that same habitat, but we also have to have opportunities for people to enjoy wildlife. I'm Vicki Vargas Madrid with Denver Parks Mountain Parks. I am the Wildlife Program Manager for the Denver Park System. Canada geese, they're our resident goose population in the Denver metro area, and we are out here tagging and collaring about 50 geese from 4 different parks. Our Canada goose populations within what we call our resident goose populations, they're those geese that don't migrate anymore.
All the green collars, right?
The idea is to put neck collars on them and leg bands. And what we're trying to do is gather as much information about these geese as far as how far are they going? Are they staying within our parks year after year after year? And if they are, how long are they staying here? We're trying to get a handle on whether some of our mitigation strategies for managing goose populations in the Denver Park System, if those strategies are working. And those numbers help us determine if the habitat that is there is supporting them. I would say it's been maybe close to 20 years that geese have been tagged in the Denver metro area. We want to make sure that we can sustain and manage our wildlife populations so that people can enjoy our parks in that more natural way and in that natural environment.
Denver Park says they tagged and collared 200 geese at 4 different parks today. They did that work alongside state and national wildlife workers. But wait, you say, what was that bit about the goose chili? Well, yeah. If you've been taking a gander at Next for a while, you might remember when we lifted the lid and stirred the pot of a bit of a controversy that was simmering about feeding goose chili to the homeless in town. It was 2019 when Denver Parks and Rec worked with the USDA to round up some 1,600 park geese, euthanize them, process the meat, and donate it to the Metro Caring Food Bank. Metro Caring then served up the geese in goose chili, shepherd's pie, and meatloaf. They swore, Marilyn, that everybody was warned that you were getting Canada Goose. It said, like on the package, Canada Goose.
They knew it was goose.
They knew it was goose. They weren't goosing people without their permission.
All right.
They weren't doing that. You're not allowed to do that. Back with your feedback about geese and other things next. Feedback tonight from Henry, who writes, "You are single-handedly killing Governor Polis's bridge project. He's not going to help you when Trump comes after you when he purges his enemies from the media." Henry, there's a lot to unpack there, but we'll give it a try. So first and foremost, my goal in critiquing the governor's $29 million pedestrian bridge project, his legacy bridge project, is to get you, the public, information so that you can decide whether you think it's a good idea or not. If this all gets out there in the public and everybody loves it, so be it. They're going to build the bridge. They might build the bridge anyway. The idea that we would shade our coverage to get protection from one politician if another politician comes for us, oh boy.